Our session today is titled the Cooperative Bootcamp. Become fluent in your business model, your unique business model in the credit union brand. And our presenter is none other than my friend, Erin Hancock. Erin is the program manager for education with the International Center for Cooperative Management at St. Mary's University in Halifax, Canada. For those of you who may not be familiar, the International Center for Cooperative Management is a global leader in research and education focused on cooperative management and governance. And they offer a number of certificate, graduate, and master's levels program online, as well as executive education and cooperative study tours. So I encourage anyone in our WYCUP audience who may be considering an advanced degree within the cooperative sector to check them out. They've got a lot of great things going on there. So Erin serves on the board and CSR committee of INOVA Credit Union. She also serves on the boards of the Bus Stop Theater Cooperative and the Community Housing Management Network Cooperative. Over the years, she's also served on other boards, including the Cooperative Development Foundation of Canada, the North American Students of Cooperation, and the Ottawa Women's Credit Union. She was a co-founder of the Cooperative Enterprise Council of New Brunswick. So today, Erin is going to take us on a deep dive into what it means to speak fluently about the credit union difference. What is that difference? And how do we define our value proposition in order to live up to our cooperative principles? Erin and I have had several conversations over the years about the potential for the cooperative model to change the world for the better. We face some incredible challenges in the world today, from climate change, the global pandemic, extreme inequality. And these aren't issues that we can solve locally. We need to work together on a global scale. And the burden to finding solutions to these problems will rest on millennials and young people. So it's really important that you're here with us today. I believe that the cooperative model is the answer, and Erin is going to show us how. So without further ado, I present you to Erin Hancock. Erin, thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. There's something very special about this WYCUP group, and I know other folks from the conference are joining too, and I bet there's something special about you too. But I always find within this WYCUP community, it's like everybody that's up to something in credit unions, everybody that's really going the extra mile, that doesn't just phone it in with their work, but really cares deeply about what they do, they are attracted to the WYCUP circles. And so it's always a pleasure to share this space and an honor to be part of everyone's learning journey as well within their really important careers. You know, what was said earlier in the session that we all attended before, you know, about the difference that we can make and that everybody is a change maker. I truly believe that about everybody who's joining us here today. Congratulations also to all of the scholarship winners and those who applied, and apply again next year if you didn't make it through this year. So just to acknowledge the land that I'm located on, because, you know, in this work that we do as enterprises that are based in community, that are very much place-based, it's important for us to acknowledge this. This isn't the end of the type of reconciliation work that we need to do with the Indigenous folks tied to our lands, but certainly it's a great practice. And if it's something that you're open to, I encourage you to name the lands that you're on today. Historically. And also, if you don't know what lands you're on, it's an opportunity to get to know them. So St. Mary's University, and where I live as well, is located on the unceded, never surrendered ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people called Mi'kmaqi. It's covered by the 18th century treaties of peace and friendship. We have a lot of work to do. We'd like to think we're really nice here in Canada, but we still have a lot of work to do. So in terms of our objectives here today, we're ambitious. We're always ambitious in this WYCUP community. And so this is how I've laid it out for us, that we become more fluent in our unique business model, because what we do is truly amazing. that we're more comfortable and conversational about the credit union difference in the credit union brand. And some of you here today deeply get it. You get the difference, you live the difference, it matters to you, you get it. But sometimes we all struggle a little bit trying to put it into language to maybe future members, current members, new employees that we work with, new members of the board, and so forth. So hopefully we all walk away a little bit more confident in our fluency around how to talk about what we do, that we expand our repertoire and how we define our value, that we celebrate our good work. All WYCUP events should involve some amount of celebration, and that we learn from each other. So you will have a chance throughout our time here today to unmute yourself and share a bit as well, if that's what you're up for. And for those of you who don't typically take up space in larger groups like this, I would just want to encourage you to say this is very much a safe space. This is a group that's just dying to get to know one another. So if you're someone who wants to challenge yourself to speak today, you will have a chance. And the perfect thing is you'll get to speak about what you do, and you're not going to be wrong about that. So hopefully, again, very safe space. So let's start in the chat by adding, hopefully a response to this is quite simple for you. What do you do? And you can speak about what you do in terms of your own role within your organization, or you can speak about how you would describe what you do in your credit union, like what the whole credit union does. So it's just a way for us to see what kind of language people are using to describe what they do, what's sort of front and center for them. How do you sum up what you do? Let's see it in the chat. You can write in any language. Ooh, I connect the dots, virtual engagement. Okay, what else? I hope all of you have a response to this. You get up in the morning for some reason. You're here at this conference for some reason. Great. Okay, so talking about your specific role. Better connect and service more diverse communities and the marginalized. Excellent. Marketing. Yes. Okay, great. So you can see, if you were to categorize these, we're seeing a real mix of things, and they're all right. Some people are talking more specifically about maybe their title or maybe their role, the aspect of the organization that they do. And some people are sort of at that 10,000 foot level. We exist to positively impact people. We exist to serve our members. Those things, you don't even necessarily hear the financial sector in that, right? It's sort of like a broader mission. So it's great. Go ahead and keep sharing on that. This is a good starting point for us today. And don't get suspicious of the process. Don't worry. We're all growing together today. So because I mentioned brand, and because I mentioned in the session description as well, I just wanted to break that down, because I feel like even up until 10 years ago, most of us, when we referred to brand, it was very much a marketing department thing. It was very much about a logo, colors, sort of some imagery and schema that we used to represent who we were, either as a product or a whole organization. And now it has a much more different meaning. I think where we've almost relegated those elements I just mentioned to just a smaller portion of what we mean by brand. And so if brand is an icky word to you, let's just replace it with character. What I'm talking about when I talk about the credit union brand or the co-op brand is very much about character. And so today, we have a lot of very savvy consumers out there in the world. And I think a lot more people, and the research is showing a lot more people are making decisions based on values. Again, like Tom mentioned, we're all a little bit more conscious of what's happening globally with our planet, with public health, with things that feel like there's a more and more need for us to make sure that we're being conscious and putting our resources and being affiliated with things that are really aligned with our own values. And so to know the character of a credit union and to trust in that character, I think is really important for our very savvy members and future members. So some people use the language ethos, so practices or values that distinguish a person or an organization or even a country from another. And we also often think of what is on brand, what is off brand. So what is a fit versus what is not a fit. So I think of it in these sort of, this is a composite of, you know, many different things most of us know about brand. And this is sort of my mental model of it that I'll share here today. So it includes the things that you do intentionally share. So that's like that marketing material, that's the logo, how you maybe set up your physical space and your branches and so forth, what you share in member communication. So those are the things that you have, you know, control over, you're intentional about. Then it's your practices and your values. So how you act. So it's not just about telling people who you are, but it's about how you live that and then how they witness that. So how you choose to do business, how you talk to people, how you allocate your time and your money, how you make decisions of all sorts. And for example, in the work that I do, I almost never talk about making money without nuancing it with other factors. So because cooperatives are not capital serving organizations entirely, right? It's a component of what we do, but we're not driven by capital, we're driven by people. If we just talk, and if we're spending a lot of time in our meetings talking about finances only, we maybe forget about those other nuances that truly make us a distinct organization. Don't worry, we'll unpack that more. Our brand includes the intangible. So the things that, you know, the feelings that people have when they interact with us. So they're a good business or they take care of me. So these are things that we evoke a feeling with people. And it's maybe could be described as an assessment that you can't necessarily break down into the parts. So if someone had to defend that, they take care of me, you know, it's more like a composite feeling and less of like, well, let me list all the things they've done. No, it's more like a sense that I have of it. And then it's most importantly, and I think if I had to summarize brand in just one quick definition, I would say it's how people see and understand you. So it is, again, a combination of so many factors. And my current mentor, Kathy McIntyre, who's on the board of First West Credit Union, did an awesome presentation last Friday. I hope some of you were there for it on equity, diversity, and inclusion. And she raised this, and it's such a great concept, the social license to operate. I think that's such a fun thing to explore. And it's sort of in this era where we can talk about things and have access to platforms very easy through social media and so forth. If we don't have the will and support of our stakeholders, in our case, our members and wider community, in believing in what we do and thinking that we're doing well, then cancel culture is there to say, you don't get members anymore, you don't get to play anymore, you don't get to call yourself a credit union anymore, or whatever that may be. I'm not saying that to be threatening, but I'm saying that to say this is a really interesting concept, the social license to operate, that we really need to show up in ways that our members expect and be consistent with who we say we are in order for people to still agree that we're a good institution that people want to be part of. So our business model, so the credit union or SACO or Caisse Populaire, however you define it for you, People's Bank, you know, there's a lot that if we took a full poll of all the language that everybody uses to describe a credit union and define a credit union, we would certainly be able to probably pick through a number of threads that are consistent among people across the world. But we're also going to get a huge amount that's unique just to defining your own credit union. That makes a lot of sense because firstly, on the sort of unified side of things, we share principles, we share a democratic way of organizing, even if we apply that in different ways. But we also, I like some folks in my circle like to say, if you know one credit union, you know one credit union, because every single one is so unique and should be based on the fact that they're serving members and driven by member needs, ideally. And none of us have the exact same overlapping membership, so it should show up in different ways in terms of how we run our organizations. And also, we can't apply a cookie cutter approach to understanding our credit unions because of all of these complex things in terms of the context in which we operate as well. There's so much diversity between us. And because we want to carry out that unique will of our membership on any given year, it's going to look different. So even we would define maybe year to year our credit union role a little bit differently. And I think that's appropriate as well, because we're not a stagnant, stale institution. We do evolve with what is changing around us and what we're leading in terms of change. And fundamentally, our unique business model is how we understand and how we understand our business. It shapes every micro and macro decision that we make. So everything in terms of our relationships with our members, what services we deem as essential. You would have seen that last year when things changed, and still, I know a lot of people are still dealing with COVID in a very acute way, in what we considered to be essential to serve our members at that time, how we were protecting staff, how we maybe had to thin out what we were doing, or maybe add on new products in order to serve our members. So a fundamental assumption here is the way that we understand things and the way that we describe things, the language that we choose, and leading to our mental model of how we see our work and how we see our credit union and maybe the sector more broadly really does inform our behavior. They're almost inextricably linked. So this is my challenge to you. As we move through some of the ways of framing our unique business model today, have some way of taking notes, however you want to do that. Think about this as a bit of a menu, because there's going to be a lot of different ways of thinking about it, a lot of different language used. And for where you're at with your credit union today, some of it will resonate and some of it may not. But hopefully everybody will walk away with a few more nuggets. So simplifying our business model to start. If we think about it as the how and the what, we have our business model is the cooperative business model, and then our economic activity, you could say, is in the financial sector or financial services. So you could substitute one of those and get a vastly different organization. So we could have something that operates in the financial sector, but it doesn't operate as a cooperative, right? And that fundamentally changes how that organization works, where money flows to and from, and so forth. Or you could have a cooperative that isn't in the financial services sector. Instead, it's in food supply. And that is a fundamentally different business. So I sort of think of it as having these two core components, and each of them being really important. So today we're going to focus on understanding the cooperative business model as financial cooperatives, because I suspect that most of you already understand your financial services sector pretty well and your role in it pretty well. We tend to recruit for those type of skills and competencies, and we also tend to train for them. And I would argue that acknowledging that the cooperative competencies are just as important to the success of our organizations and the success in how we deliver on member needs. So sometimes if we forget that we're not just a financial services organization, then we tend to adopt practices from non-cooperatives. So we're borrowing all these practices that seem mainstream and they seem validated and they seem shiny and exciting. And some of them do fit for us. And I don't want to demonize non-cooperatives. I'm obviously a champion for cooperatives, but it is worth saying that if we don't evaluate whether something is a fit for us, then we might drift and forget that cooperative aspect of our business. Okay, this is a master's level quiz right here. So first of all, write in the chat if you know what this is. Does anybody know what this is? Okay, this is the definition of, yeah, Miranda, extra points for you. The definition of a cooperative, yeah, and I've specifically left blanks. So if you are speaking Spanish or Portuguese, if you know any elements of the definition of cooperatives that we sort of acknowledge through the International Co-op Alliance, then you can write those components in your own language in the chat. I don't want to disadvantage you in this. But if any of you think, okay, you're starting to fill in the words, good, Dorman, you got one. Anybody else? Voluntarily, nice. Can anybody else fill in any of those blanks? Social, yes. Okay, somebody help Dorman out. He's carrying all the, okay, Miranda, yes. Some other people maybe who haven't contributed yet. Can you fill in any of these blanks? It's a mouthful, that's for sure. Yes, democratically, good. Yes, I'm definitely seeing some DEs here that are getting some of these. So it sounds like a real, there's a lot of good learning happening in those spaces. Okay, so let's see it because it is a mouthful for sure. Okay, look at all of that. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. An autonomous association of persons united voluntarily to meet our common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations through a democratically, oh, I always mix those up, through a jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprise. So if we break those down, that's a lot of really important components. Autonomous, meaning that we lead it ourselves, our members drive it, not some outside force. People join voluntarily. That we're there to serve member needs and aspirations, and not just financial aspirations, but social and cultural as well. There's a lot to unpack there. Democratically, it's very rare in our economy that you see democracy baked into the economy, right? Sometimes we don't see that in our politics either, but that's a whole other story. Jointly owned. So it's, this sort of self-help movement that we do it together and that we're an enterprise, right? So there's a lot there that I think is quite unique about what we do as a credit union, as a financial cooperative. So that definition applies to us too. And as you can see, that definition of a cooperative doesn't point to a specific economic activity. It's saying this is the fundamental business model. You'll achieve different needs through using this business model. I would challenge all of you to memorize it so you can just bring it out at a meeting sometime. And also have it there to reference sometimes, testing your own behavior. Okay. So as we sort of break down and build back up the co-op enterprise model, there's some key language, some key concepts there that hopefully are helpful in anchoring your thinking about this. So distributive justice, that we exist in order to put sort of more power, more wealth in the hands of more folks, that it's not about a hierarchy, it's not about serving some wealthy folks and forgetting about others. It's very much about making sure that we are serving community needs. That we are self-help organizations. That's not a language that's used as much these days, but the sort of DIY component of what we do, I think, is still very intriguing for some, and certainly it is what we do. The ownership aspect of what we do, so membership equaling ownership, that members are in fact a part of the organization, not just some sort of unknown folks who are just filling their pockets with our members' money. It very much is about the members having ownership in the institution. And also that we maximize member and community benefit. So that's a harder one to wrap our heads around because it means something more complex. So we have to be challenging ourselves in how we think about things and how we lead and where we put our time in terms of optimizing that, maximizing that for our members and community instead of maximizing profit, which in some ways is a little bit more of a clear understanding that everyone can sort of look at numbers and agree on. But when we talk about benefit, we have to have more complex conversations and be willing to have those. So do we need financial success in order to serve those benefits? Certainly we do. Sustainability matters, being responsible with members' money matters. But do we need to isolate financial success and call it the first priority in our businesses? Unless we're in an acute crisis, probably not. And it might be one of those things where we're shooting ourselves in the foot where we do, because it drives us in a direction that's not consistent with the intention of our business model. We've seen this happen. We see lots of organizations that cease to be cooperatives because leadership took things in a different direction, or folks that wanted to benefit in the moment took things in a different direction to demutualize. But when we're all informed and we get that nuanced understanding and the opportunity of our model, then we hopefully don't have those same issues. I know none of you would ever be involved in something like that. Okay, so moving on to the principle. So you can write in the chat if you have a principle that you feel is sort of your guiding light in your work, or if you have a favorite principle or something that just feels to you just very exciting, very juicy about the co-op model. So these are internationally acknowledged cooperative principles. There's 7 of them. There are different folks around the world who have different variations on these. This was back from 1995, following a global conversation through the International Cooperative Alliance. We came up with these and say, these are the things we feel are common to all cooperatives and that we should all be conscious of and delivering on by calling ourselves a principle-based and values-based business model. Okay, some good things coming up in the chat. Great. Excellent. And then some of you will also know these operating principles. I'm sure you have these on your wall. But this is another way to sort of plant in your mind, another sort of framing. And these are consistent with those 7 principles I just mentioned, but defined by the World Council to help us sort of be nuanced within the sector that we work in. So I like to talk in the language of the broader cooperative sector so we don't miss the opportunities of understanding ourselves in those nuanced ways. And also so that we can think about things like Principle 6, that we are part of this global network of organizations that are values-based and hopefully making a big difference. So Principle 6 around cooperation among cooperatives, I think is really an opportunity for all of us to strengthen the whole economy of cooperatives. So the values, the principles, these operating principles are very much our ground rules for operation. It's sort of the DNA of our model. So good, people are adding to the chat, awesome. And even though a lot of us know the principles, not all of us are as familiar with the values. I won't spend too much time on this, but it is worth saying, you know, our statement of cooperative identity, it's the definition, it's the principles, it's the values, and it's the ethical values, which are combined here. And those, you know, depending on how you look at your work, you might hang your hat on some more than others, but they very much are, again, the DNA of our model. So pointing to the ethical values, the way it's described in the co-op identity is in the tradition of our founders, cooperative members believe in the ethical values of honesty, openness, social responsibility, and caring for others. So again, it's not just us as credit union entities trying to act and saying we are a certain thing. It's very much about those people who consider themselves a match to be a member of our organization as well. So it's really a matchmaking exercise as we bring on new members. Okay. So as an example of practice or counterpoint, if you will, I spoke with a gentleman who was involved leading a credit union on the continent of Africa. I won't name where. I want him to remain anonymous. But he did a program with us, a training with us, and he said, I just hadn't thought about the member as the reason for why we do what we do. He said, I've been incentivizing all of my staff to sell people more things, to convince them they needed more things, when if I looked at it from a member point of view, they don't need those things, and financially those things are not right for them. But it was sort of borrowing that tactic from non-co-ops, which is to incentivize sales. And it's not to say that you shouldn't create new products. It's not to say you shouldn't match members with products that are right for them. But if you're incentivizing selling products without the consideration of the member, then that doesn't necessarily reflect our ethical values here. All right, business with impact. I won't go too deep into this, but just to say these are some other ways that we can frame what we do, and some of it might really resonate with you. In particular, I think multiple bottom lines is one of those things that is appealing and yet complex to manage in our day-to-day. Also, the concept of multiple bottom lines is saying that it's not necessarily, like I said before, business first, or the sort of enterprise aspect of what we do first, and then the warm and fuzzy social stuff after. It's very much that we're serving things that are all very important to our business model, and that there is complexity in doing that. And so we must give time for that. With values-based business, that's one thing that just keeps coming up again and again. I like this. Capital is the fuel. It's not the driver, and it's not the destination. And if you're an investor-owned firm and your goal is to sort of push for those quarterly profits so that the shareholders are happy, you very much are serving capital in those instances. And all of the folks involved in the organization, to some degree, are working to serve that goal. But in credit unions, ideally, we work with capital. Capital is important to what we do, but certainly people are the driver. People are at the heart of what we do in the co-op model. And in a way, it makes our work meaningful for us. And I think why a lot of people are attracted to working in credit unions. Certainly, I've talked to tons of people over the years who said, I was working in traditional banks, I found the credit unions, and my feet are firmly planted, I'm never leaving. And I get it, because for a lot of people, it's a match for their personal values. The duality of our model, it's another way we can frame it. So thinking that we are both an association of people and we are an enterprise. We are a business that involves sort of these two components. And that, again, you can't drive just from the enterprise and forget the people that are the membership. And you can't do the opposite either. You can't say like, yeah, we're in the financial services sector, but we're really about just like, all about members all the time, but like never really innovating on product or never, offering high quality service. Like, obviously, you need to balance these things, and you need to think about sustainability and all of those things too. But in terms of our association, what often happens over time is we're more and more challenged as we grow bigger, or as we get farther and farther generations away from folks who maybe started our institutions. We lose a bit of that sense of the visceral, we started this because we needed it and it matters to us. And it's important that it runs a certain way and reflects certain values. And so over time, as things get bigger, the democratic aspect, people have a harder time navigating. Member consultation is a little bit more off the side of members' desks. That's often the trend we see, but it doesn't have to be. And I know many of you here today are working on that. A lot of you succeeding at that too, remembering that we are this dual model, and it isn't necessarily two distinct things, and it isn't necessarily one before the other, but it's sort of like a collaboration that they feed each other and need each other. This is from someone asked in the chat if you can get the slides. Yes, indeed, Thomas. If you want to, you can add them at the end of this as well, so that people can download those from the chat. And if anybody needs references for any of these things, you want to go do further reading, please contact me. I'll give you lots of books and articles to read. But our cooperative purpose, this is from an article in the Journal of Cooperative Business that the National Co-op Business Association in the US produces, from a 2019 article from Karen Miner and Sonia Navkovich, two folks I get to work with at my center. And this is one way that they propose we could think about cooperatives, both having value. But type 1 cooperatives, more focused on pure economic benefit to members. And that is still a valid way to organize a cooperative or a credit union. So you respond to maybe market failures. So there isn't a service or isn't an affordable service. So you go ahead and provide that. You create access to new goods or services or offer better prices. And you might correct economic injustice and address access to the market. So that's a valid way to run a cooperative or credit union. It's a valid way to incorporate. A reason why. As I describe this, just think and reflecting on your own institution. Would you say you're more of a type 1 or more of a type 2? So this is a quote from that article. Type 2 cooperatives captures the essence of the International Cooperative Alliance Statement on Co-op Identity. Although the reality is more complex than either ideal type, placing a cooperative in one or the other of these categories clarifies the foundational elements on purpose, values, and principles as the critical aspects of the cooperative enterprise model. For example, some credit unions will focus on economic benefit to members, such as type 1 credit unions, while others move more deeply into type 2 territory. So maybe they're focused on redefining wealth, defining its purpose as vehicles for community and economic development. So go ahead and add to the chat if you think that you are a type 2 credit currently. Do you feel like you're a type 1 or a type 2 institution right now? Type 2, exclamation mark. In between, yeah, that's fair. In between is absolutely fair. A lot of type 2s, maybe type 1s aren't as willing to put themselves in there. Yay! People knows. Great. Okay. And in between, yeah, that's absolutely fair. Okay, great. Well, I mean, it's an interesting way, and again, we can send you the link so that you can check that out and think more deeply in that reflection. And it's just to say there is this opportunity. There's almost this promise of the model and how we operate, and it's great for us to be critically reflecting on what we do to see where we're at, where we could be. And all of that, of course, leads into member satisfaction and member loyalty too. That isn't necessarily the place to start, but it sure does address that as well. 1.5. Okay, good. Okay, great. And this is my last sort of bit of the menu, the lexicon of sort of describing the model, digging into the model mental models for this. And then we'll get into some quotes from leaders in the sector as well to think about how they frame what we do. So the number one thing here for me, this is what drives everything I do, why I'm attracted to co-ops, why I volunteer on credit union boards and so forth, is the dignity of the human being. One member, one vote, as opposed to how much money you get, that's how much say you have. Very, very much important to me, the fact that every single person, regardless of where they sit in our society and how we would place them on any sort of metric, is they inherently have value as a human being. And I think that's something fundamental to having our world work. Some other language you might use in describing what you do, again, some's going to fit for you and some is not. Community impact, that we're local. Some people like that. Bank local. Some credit unions use that kind of language. Community innovation or community development, poverty alleviation, helping build livelihoods for our members, patient capital. So this sort of idea that we're invested in the real economy, that we use sort of financial instruments that acknowledge time and what is needed in order to move things forward, and also not just be focused on that quick return. Intergenerational capital and wealth, that our credit unions were started by folks and it's on their shoulders that we get to continue the work that we do for members. That's another thing that's important when you're thinking about the sort of demutualization, which isn't as common in financial cooperatives, but certainly is that if, people 50 years ago started this institution to serve the community, if we have, as members now, have autonomy to dissolve our credit union, everybody walks away with money. There's a lot of legislation in place that doesn't let that happen, but it has happened. And it's sort of not acknowledging that we are an intergenerational wealth type of organization. People started it to serve members. We want to be stewards of our organization to serve future members and that type of thing. And go ahead and type into the chat if you're finding any language that resonates with you, or if you would tweak any of this language that fits a little bit for what you do. Long-term vision, sustainability, distribution of wealth, the return to the members or dividends. Some of you, that's an important part of your language, that being able to say, yes, we're making a surplus, but that's going back to our members. That's how we work. We're transparent. We distribute wealth that way. Collective entrepreneurship, people-centered economy. And some of you are grittier, you're bottom up, you're grassroots, you're embedded in community organizing. So just note anything that fits for you. Okay, so let's get some other voices into the room. Okay, so I've got a handful of quotes here from different folks in the sector, and this is like reading at school, where people would read a page or read a chapter. So if there's anyone there that wants to put up your hand, the quotes are only a few sentences. If we get somebody else's voice into the room, does anybody want to? Here, I'll show the first one. Any hands up? Yeah, Tom? Okay, this is the first quote. Go for it.
All right. So I'll be your guinea pig to start off. So cooperatives exist in a sweet spot between the for-profit and nonprofit worlds. They are people-centered enterprises run by and for their members, and they try to achieve economical, but also social and cultural goals to benefit those members.
A+, amazing, thank you. Thank you. And this is neat. I don't know if other folks have already seen this, but this is a recent TED Talk. If any of you watch some of those, but this is by Anu Pusa, who's out of the University of Eastern Finland, who recently released this. And it's got something like a couple million views now, which is so exciting. Yeah, okay, some people here have seen it. Great. Oh yeah, and Cassandra reminds us that you can raise your hand, and that's found in the reactions button of Zoom. That the menu recently changed, and that's where it is now under reactions. Okay, so that's a good TED Talk if you want to check it out. So what you heard in there, people-centered again comes up, by and for their members. I think that challenges all of us in thinking about, especially if we're in a credit union of a certain size, how we really do make sure that we understand our members and that we're serving them and they truly feel like they have autonomy in guiding our organization in appropriate ways. Okay, so let's see. Jenny Lynn. Did you want to read this one? This is from Ariel Guarcos, the president of the International Co-op Alliance based in Argentina. He's the president of the Cooperative Confederation of the Argentine Republic. This is an address, this is part of an address that he gave just earlier this month during International Day of Cooperatives. Go ahead.
Sure. Our strong cooperative identity is based on unique values and principles that are focused on responding to the needs and aspirations of people. In times of crisis, this identity has helped rebuild communities that are more resilient. Today, more than ever, an economic model with community leadership focused on the common goal is necessary.
Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate hearing your voice. Great. So yes, that resiliency factor, and it's not just a notion. It's been proven through lots of research showing that if you look at cooperative enterprises and their sort of longevity, time and time again, not all cooperatives succeed. Let's be real about that. And not all of them are at the forefront of innovation, but some are, and many are doing really good work. And over time, compared to non-cooperative organizations, tend to last longer. So we can all be proud of that. Okay. Trin, am I saying your name right? Okay. I've got a bigger one for you. Can we unmute Trin? There you go. And if you want to introduce yourself too, go right ahead. Sorry, I forgot to say that before.
Thank you. Erin, you've done a really phenomenal job. I love that land recognition. In the beginning, you started off on the right foot. So thank you for that. My deepest appreciation for it. Trin LaCoulter, I'm the VP of People Power at Wonderclose. For framing our work, cooperatives as values and principles-based business enterprises are naturally suited to be key contributors of enterprise-based solutions to significant social, environmental, and economic problems the world is facing, as well as catalysts for a shift in thinking that recognizes that business and the economy operate within the finite boundaries of the planet and exist to serve human needs, not the other way around. For cooperatives to be in the best position to be agents of change, they must nurture and preserve their cooperative identity, recognize and take steps to mitigate the risk of isomorphism and demutualization, and in doing so, exercise courageous leadership.
Awesome. Thank you. That was great. That was a bigger one. But there's so much there. There's so many juicy things just in those handful of sentences. And, catalysts for a shift in thinking. Yes. Can we be driving? And I think many of you are already driving people to think about their communities in different ways. The finite boundaries of the planet. We can no longer say, let's just produce everything we can so we make money right now. It's going to be great. We can't do that. We can't contribute to that because we know we're seeing it. You have people in your circles, in your families, in your communities right now, people who couldn't be here today because they're dealing with floods and fires. Like Tom said, we can't really deny this anymore. And often co-ops and credit unions have seen that before others and are willing to take action on that and be responsible for that. Did we cause that to happen? Maybe or maybe not, but are we responsible for our communities now? Can we stand in a point of responsibility? We can, and we can make good decisions that way. And courageous leadership. That sounds good. That sounds scary and yet so good. And the idea of the cooperative identity being part and parcel to that. And just to say, so this was from an article that was published in the International Journal of Cooperative Accounting and Management. And that's produced through the Center of Excellence in Accounting and Reporting for Cooperatives, which is a sister center at our university at St. Mary's. And this is actually a graduate of our Master of Management Co-ops and Credit Unions program, who works in as the general counsel, a lawyer with the financial cooperative, with the cooperators, an insurance business here in Canada. And if isomorphism and demutualization were two really big words, we'll get to that one now. This one I will do myself because it's just a mouthful. Isomorphism. So it's sort of this phenomena that drives organizations to resemble and behave like others. Don't worry, Sheena, there's one left for you. Dr. Danielle Cote is someone who I've had the pleasure of working with, and who wrote a great book on cooperative management that he's released in English and French as well. Talks about a whole bunch of these things in terms of the risks to cooperatives and our co-op identity, and how it plays out in terms of our strategy and how we choose to manage as well. But when we sort of borrow practices and start acting as non-co-ops, we sort of demutualize from within, meaning we sort of lose our credit union difference from within over time, and essentially remove what it means to be a unique business model. But he also argues that our business model is our competitive advantage because members are also owners. They are our credit union. We are them. There is this inherent advantage for loyalty if we do it right. So you can take companies like Nike that have people feel humongous brand loyalty to them. I'm always going to buy Nike sneakers. I love what they do. That's totally me. And people see themselves in that brand. They have no ownership in that brand, but they very much tie it to themselves. However, in credit unions, we have that inherent actual ownership relationship with our members and membership relationship with them, where we really have an advantage for building loyalty. Ideally, if we do it right. So some key principles required to building loyalty are a world-class value proposition based on ethics and integrity without compromise. Mutual trust. Trust is such a good one. Transparent access to information. That's again one of our principles, right? Principle 5, it's in there. And enterprise being proximate to, so like close to and coached by its members. So again, that member voice coming through what we do. Capable of acting on the enthusiasms of its customers, our case members. Acting on the enthusiasm of our members. I love that. Focus on the unexpected. So sort of this member surprise. We delight them with how we serve them. And they have true interest in what we do far beyond sales. And we also anticipate their future needs. And all these things are components of loyalty that I think credit unions are uniquely positioned to do better than anybody else because, again, of the membership and ownership structure. Okay. Oh, there's some good things. Oh, Michael Maskell's here. Great. Good things going into the chat. And Michael studied with Danielle, so knows a bit more of those nuances too. So thank you for contributing, Michael. Okay, Sheena, this one's yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. A wealth of information, Erin, I must say, a wealth of information. Okay, so here we go. Framing our work. As cooperators, we must challenge ourselves to live up to our shared principles if we expect to deepen the impact of our cooperatives in our communities and sharpen the co-op distinction in the eyes of external stakeholders. It is time for all cooperators to ask themselves if there is more they can do to live up to their cooperative identity. This touched me so deep. This is a conversation that I've been having recently, having been elected as president for the board of directors, trying to show our purpose, our authentic difference. I remember that was one of our themes that WYCUP had introduced, living our authentic difference between other financial sectors, or should I say bodies, instead of acting like a bank, but being more of a cooperative. So yeah.
Awesome. They're so lucky to have you. Keep being
you.
courageous.
Trying.
Keep having those courageous conversations. You know, it was neat. If any of you were in that DEI conversation back on Friday, that workshop that Kathy McIntyre and others were involved in from First West, it was amazing. They sort of showed this chart of how you do cultural change. And whether you're talking about DEI or embedding co-op identity or whatever that is in your organization, if you're not already there, we have to sort of be compassionate with the process. So some people are at the point where they're willing to have these conversations. Some of you today are like, give it to me, just tell me everything. I'm ready to run with it. I take these good ideas. I want to implement them. The more I learn, the more I can just go with it. Some people are somewhere in between, you know, or maybe at the point where they're sort of like, I don't get this co-op difference. I don't get this credit union difference yet. And so for us to be compassionate and be willing to keep having those conversations and presenting things in different ways that are going to resonate with people, it helps with that cultural shift of us truly living our credit union difference. Okay, so to recap, so we talked about a number of things today, but if we summed it up, we certainly talked about the cooperative business model, acknowledging we're financial cooperatives, that we're guided by principles, we're a values-based business model, we're driven by members and serving members, we're a dual model, again, that enterprise as well as association of people, all together equally important. And Dr. Danielle Cote calls it the cooperative equilibrium, that we can't ever let it get too lopsided. And also capital serving people instead of the other way around. So some of the sort of core things that underpin what we do. So let's hear, does anyone want to, and you won't be wrong, in our last handful of minutes together, does anyone want to define what is the credit union difference or even key components of it? If you want to raise your hand, it'd be great to have even more voices here. I hope you can define it for yourself. If you want, you can add it to the chat if that feels a little bit more accessible for you. What is the credit union difference? Okay, Tom.
So, you know, I don't want to, so the credit union difference to me, you know, I think of specifically, I look at the issue of language, right? That what we're talking about here. And it's really interesting because in the work that I do with the World Council, I have the opportunity to travel with credit union people from all around the world. And in many parts of the world, we're known as cooperatives, you know, cooperativas de oro y crédito, SACOs in Africa. And so they're specifically using that word cooperative in our name as part of our language and as our definition, right? But in English, we don't. And so I think that this question of what is the credit union difference has a little bit different relevance in the English language than it does in perhaps some of the other languages groups that we work with. And so I one of the things, so to me, my answer to this is what is the credit union difference is that we're a cooperative, that we are a cooperative financial institution. And that plays out in a lot of different things. I have a bunch more to say about that, but I don't want to dominate this part of the conversation, but maybe I'll come back to that afterwards. But you know, that cooperative, that word cooperative is so important and inherent to what we do and how we do it, that to me, that's the essence of our credit union difference. Absolutely.
Thank you. And I would say if any of you aren't already friends and social with Tom, make time to spend time with him because he gets it. He gets it. And he's been doing all these great conversations with WYCUP folks and other communities. And it's just really great to have people like Tom and other folks who are here today who really do get it and can really help all of us in our learning and framing along the way. Michael. Welcome. Cassandra, can we unmute Michael Maskell?
Sure.
There we go. There we go.
Hi, yes, thank you. I'd just like to chip in because I think the cooperative movement is just so important. And I know here in Canada, very seldom do credit unions sort of call themselves cooperatives. They talk about credit unions and banking and all the rest of it. But I think it's so important as a movement to put us out there because the cooperative thing is working together and it's for the betterment of human beings and the
Mm.
planet. And I think it's a viable alternative to our large-scale capitalist system, which is just, based on greed and competition and with total disregard to people and the environment, which they exploit for their own use. So if we can somehow, there's almost a political agenda behind it, in the sense that we are doing good things in a cooperative, healthy, loving way. And it's quite contrary to the large-scale capitalist system. And somehow we need to show that more to people, because it becomes really important that you shop locally and you support local things, that these things come together. And I think it's the only way that we as a human species will survive. Otherwise, it will be some sort of feudal structure with billionaires on top. And I think we need to put that out there more. And I don't see it a lot. And I don't see the credit unions really taking it on either. So I would just like to urge people to think more that way, because I think it's a matter of survival.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. I mean, I think that's a bit of a call to action to embrace being a little bit more radical in how we talk about ourselves, especially at a time where we're facing some pretty unprecedented things. So, it makes sense to have new responses, maybe bigger and bolder responses to those things too. Thank you. Jenny Lynn, and then Aura.
Yes, I think our difference is our members are owners. So therefore they have a say in how the credit union operates, not only at the AGMs, but also during the course of the year. And whatever decisions our board makes is always member first. There are some other organizations that make the decisions and then inform their customers. But we talk to our members first, keep them in mind, they are first, and anything we do is taking their needs and feelings into consideration.
Phenomenal. Thank you, Jenny Lynn. Aura.
Yo me siento muy orgullosa de ser cooperativista. Las cooperativas, la diferencia de las cooperativas es que no nos enfocamos en el capital, no nos enfocamos en lo que es el dinero, sino en el desarrollo de las personas, en los beneficios de cada una de ellas. Estamos en un bien colectivo, en un bien para todos, no individualizado. Y para que nuestros países puedan también desarrollarse de una manera integral, las familias, y poder alcanzar a aquellas personas que necesitan nuestro apoyo. La cooperativa viene del principio cooperación. Todos estamos cooperando con un mismo propósito, con un mismo fin. Y por eso yo me siento muy orgullosa de pertenecer a este sistema cooperativo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Gracias. Wonderful. Thank you. So proud. That's so good. That's a reason to get up in the morning. You love what you do. You're serving families, you're serving the community, member first. These are wonderful things. So I'll leave you with a couple of questions that you can mull over, or maybe even bring into your team conversations or your board conversations. Being around, how do you frame your work? Maybe you borrow some things from today that fit. Your purpose, your key language, the things you want to say first about what you do, anything that resonated with you today. And does it point also to new practices and new behaviors as well in thinking about how you frame yourself? Is there a call to action today that you've heard from others or thought about as you were considering these ways of thinking about our model that calls you to action in new ways? If you feel stuck on defining anything besides we serve members through offering financial services, these are some questions that might help. How do you want the member to feel? What do we all agree on? What does management, staff, board, and members all say? This is what the credit union is about. That's a place to start. Whether or not you end there, decide if you like it. Again, might be a call to change practice. If we didn't do X, we wouldn't have a unique value anymore. So think about what's special about what you do and protect that. And then moving forward, I hope that you do work on the sort of easy, quick ways that you talk about your credit union so that you can not pitch it in the traditional sense, but share about it in a way that feels sort of very natural for you. So I encourage you to stay in touch with me. I'd love to hear from you. Tom said a bit about our center at the beginning, but just to reflect that we do online and in-person education for professionals like yourselves part-time or in short courses. My quick way of referring to what we do is that we help people live their difference and make a difference for their communities and members, of course. And so there's some things there, but of course, if you go to managementstudies.coop, you'll see more of it. But we do have a couple of courses coming up this fall that are pretty affordable, and we do host the Canada DE program. So if you're interested in that, we can help you with that. And this is really some additional homework. Choose your own adventure. But I encourage you to talk about what really matters to you, at least as much as you talk about the technical side of what you do. Talk about your business model. So keep building fluency and help those around you as well. Share about and be conscious about living your difference, no matter what your role is in the organization. Again, leadership doesn't have to have a title. And ask tough questions. So now that you probably are more fluent in the business model than a lot of people that you work with, be sharing that with others. Ask questions about how you're serving members. Use your knowledge for good. And thank you so much for your time today and for being so willing to do the good work and the hard work that you do out there in the community. I think Tom is just going to say, bid us adieu.
Thank you. Thank you, Erin, so much. This was a fantastic session, and I really appreciate everything that you've shared with us today. This focus on language, to me, is really important because I see the impacts that it has in the work that credit unions are doing. This is such a great opportunity for us to put some more thought into thinking about being intentional with the words that we use to describe what we do. In my travels with credit unions, I see a big variety of, so credit unions everywhere are doing, I think, a fantastic job on financial education. But there's some pretty big gaps among credit unions that aren't putting as much focus into cooperative education. And it's really that combination of the two that makes us unique, and it makes us powerful agents for change in our communities. And I think we need to bring more attention to that. And I'll say this, that I've been to credit unions in certain parts of the country where at their AGMs, their annual meeting, they have more employees of the credit union than they do members present at that meeting. And I think that we really need to have some of those serious conversations about whether or not they're fulfilling what it means to be a cooperative in this day and age. And we need to have more focus on that. So thank you so much, Erin, for bringing attention to this issue. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We have one more session this afternoon or later this evening, depending upon where you are in the world. And I hope you'll join us. We'll be highlighting an initiative from our colleagues in Brazil that's focused on empowering youth members in their communities. And it's a fantastic example that we're working on replicating through WYCUP in other countries around the world. So I hope that you'll join us then. Until then, stay safe, everyone, and we'll see you a little bit later today. Take care. Thank you, Erin, so much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, and you're most welcome.